Hi, my name is Kim Izzarelli, and welcome to Insights with Kim Izzarelli. A free and appropriate education, or FAPE, is an educational right of children with disabilities in the United States that is guaranteed by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. My guest today is Pam Schumacher, a graduate of the Lay Advocacy Advanced Parent Training Program and a member of the Council of Parents, Advocate, and Attorneys, or COPAA. Throughout 2010, Pam served as an educational advocate with the Westchester Independent Living Center, a nonprofit agency serving people with disabilities. Pam has represented families in many school districts throughout Westchester County, helping those families make informed decisions about educational rights, choices, responsibilities, and long-term outcomes for their children. Pam now represents families privately as an educational advocate, and she began advocating for her son 11 years ago when he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Welcome, Pam, to Insights. I'm so glad you could be here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, good. Pam, when does a parent know if they need to have or seek out an educational advocate?
Well, I think the process starts when you have a child who gets diagnosed with a disability, and you seek out counsel, maybe medical, to get diagnosed. And at that time, depending on their age, if they're from birth to 3, they'd go to early intervention, which is with the county. Mm-hmm. From 3 to 5, you would contact your local school district for the Committee of Preschool Education. And then from 5 to 21, you would be working with your school district with the Committee of Special Education, which is the CSE. Mm-hmm. And you would contact them to lay out a plan for your child's education.
Okay.
And it's very important to be proactive and to educate yourself on your child's disability, but also what your school district has in place and what you're entitled to by the law,
okay,
which you mentioned.
Okay. So take me back, because it's a pretty involved process,
yes,
and it's a real ramp-up time for a parent.
Right,
I know
right, right.
we both have been there. So let's just take someone who has a younger child. Yep. You mentioned 2.5, 3-year-old to 5-year-old, someone that's going
right.
to go into early intervention in Westchester County. We have early intervention. We're fortunate to have that. So the parent sees the child's presenting a certain way, some issues are there, maybe they're not developing, maybe a nursery school advisor, someone has said you should have this child assessed.
Right, and
okay.
There's a lot of people who can give you advice in that, and you can do it for yourself. If you feel as a parent that your child is developing differently, you should seek out advice from your physician and then take the next step with early intervention if the child is 3 years old or younger.
Okay.
And maybe your doctor can also advise you where to go if you need to start in with a medical diagnosis, which is very different than an educational classification, which is what the school district is going to be utilizing to decide which services that your child will be entitled to, or what the best fit is. And so that would be your first step if you have a very young child, is to contact the county, and they'll get you in contact with early intervention and do an evaluation, a series of evaluations depending on how the child is presenting. Mm-hmm. And also, as the child becomes school age, the process is different, and that you can go to your special ed office at school, mm-hmm, and they will start the evaluation process based on what they see. It can start with something called RTI, which is response to intervention, mm-hmm, or they can do a full-out assessment based on the disability of your child and move forward from there based on the findings. And you can contest these things. There's a lot of shades of gray when you're talking about special education and the development of a child. And that's where an advocate can come into play, because it really is a maze.
Okay.
And so having somebody guide you through the process and to understand the regulations and the laws which apply, and to understand the school system, which really is its own entity, mm-hmm, and it has its own language.
Okay, so there's a lot of children to serve. I think it's interesting you brought up the point that a child may not develop issues until later. Not every child has issues earlier, yes, and that it's sort of a very fluid process of an assessment, establishing, what was the plan, the name of the
IEP, right,
which stands for?
An individualized education plan.
Okay.
And very important because each child is an individual. Whatever their disability or their classification might be, they have their own strengths and weaknesses, which you as a parent know best.
Right.
The medical professionals and the educators have a very important role in helping your child develop, but I think it's very important that the parents really own that they're the expert in their own child. And that's what's going to help them be more effective as they advocate for their child or whomever they bring in to help them advocate.
Okay.
So,
tell me more about the initial meeting
Right.
of the committee,
Right.
which would be formed, I would imagine, of who
Right.
would be the
Who's
people
in
that make
there?
up that committee
Right,
of
right,
what
right.
will,
Well,
what
I
the
think-
child's path will be.
Well, you know, it's not a finite thing. First of all, I want to
Okay.
say that it's a bit of a moving target because your child is developing, and
Right.
so it's a point in time. So you meet throughout the years, depending on what your child needs, and maybe several times within a year if it needs either the plan is not correct
Okay.
or the child is not progressing.
Okay.
And progress is a really big part of special education because the law, the intent of the law is to have every child progress. Whether they're nonverbal, whether they're, they're still learning to read when they're 20. So it's very important that, and the law provides that every child should be looked at as an individual, which is where you get the I in the IEP, and I
Okay.
think that's very important. And so you meet as a group with your school chairperson or pupil personnel director, depending on how your school district is set up. You would have a school psychologist, you would have a regular education teacher, a special education teacher, and the parent, which is really a very, very important part of the meeting. You can have a parent representative from the school who can guide you. That's different than an advocate because they're working with the school district. And you can bring in as a parent anybody you wish to help you support what you need for your child and to give the committee a better understanding of the whole child, because that's really important to get a holistic view so that you can help build a plan, which is going to be your IEP, and to figure out how to implement it with all the pieces and understanding many pieces of it, the disability of your child and their strengths and weaknesses, what is in the local school district. It's really important to educate yourself as a parent what the resources are, what resources that they have, the political climate, the financial climate, because then you can better serve your child and understand.
And how do you find out what's available to you in your district?
Right. There are a lot of different ways to do it. The internet is a wonderful place to start because a lot of that information is public. The financial information, the continuum of services, meaning the different types of classrooms and services that are already existing within your school district. And you, as a parent of a child with a disability, you don't have to fit yourself into what the school has. Because it is an IEP, again, it's for the individual, but the school district has to provide it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be within the district.
Okay.
They can send you out, but their mandate is to educate your child based on their needs.
So depending on the child's issues, there may be other options outside a district that are better suited for that child than within the district.
Yes, and the committee meeting work together to make this decision.
Okay.
And I like to emphasize when I'm working with parents, very important to do your best to work with the school district and to be productive, because it's very emotional. When you have a child with a disability, you're on a roller coaster. And it continues to happen, by the way. It's not a one point at the beginning and then you accept it and everything, is hunky-dory. So for everybody, it's a moving target, and the professionals, the administrators, the educators are there for all the right reasons. You need to expect that when you go into a meeting.
Right.
But you do, as a parent, need to also understand they have systems that they're working within and constraints, financial programs that they already have in place.
Right.
So you need to educate yourself as to what that is. The internet, other parents in the district are going to be extremely helpful because they've been there and worked within the system. Special ed PTAs in your district, which is called a SEPTA, very informative. You can go the other SEPTAs within the county, and there's a website, 914septa.com, that shows different meetings that are occurring throughout the county, and those I think are invaluable because it's the other parents who have gone before you that can really guide. You can learn from.
Sure. Sure.
So that's those are some of the ways that you can find out what's going on within your local school district. And Board of Ed meetings.
Sure.
Shouldn't have forgotten that.
I'm going to just digress for a second here because I've known Pam for a while, and one of the things that really struck me years back was the amount of information that you need to keep, and really the parent's role in this, in maintaining records. What are some of the kind of things that a parent needs to just really track? Right. Personally and their own. And actually, I guess the reason that we were even talking about that one day is, what if something happens to us as parents? I mean, who would be able to follow this paper trail of events that started, 12, 15 years ago?
Well, so that's one reason, certainly. If something happened to you, you'd want a plan in place for your child so that it would be continued and they'd be supported. I think it's extremely important to keep good records and be organized about it because from the moment that your child has a disability, a lot is thrown at you, and you're going to need that information going forward for multiple reasons. Going to the other end, when your child ages out of the school system, when and if your child needs services from the state or the federal government, they need that audit trail of what has gone before, and that's going to help you get services or and funding outside of that. If you don't have a good record, it can delay the process of your child getting the funds or help that they need as an adult. And also, if you do run into issues with your school district, and you need to go back and say, look, this is what's been said. You need a very good audit trail of conversations that you've had, of meetings, of decisions that were made, or even decisions that you didn't agree upon. If you have a written record, and then you can proceed forth. And if you need to go to a legal process, you hope never to get there, because really due process is a tool that is necessary sometimes, but you try to avoid it at all costs because it doesn't always serve the best interest of your child. Now, you may have to get there, but you hope to work around that and be constructive with the school district to support your child. So
in many ways, it's economical for a district to work in the framework or with an educational advocate, because you're guiding the process, you're educating the parent, you're making helping them to find out what their resources are.
And to mediate, really, because it does get it does get confrontational, and people both sides will lose sight of what's important or what the issue is, because emotions get involved. And as people get defensive or angry or confrontative in meetings, it really can dissolve very quickly. And the problem with that is that it doesn't serve the interest of the child. It doesn't serve the interest of the school district, because it ties up everybody's resources, emotionally, financially. And so if you can work things out in a constructive way, it really benefits everybody.
Okay. Just tell me a second about, you started to talk about children that age out of the system. Just in terms of, now this would be a child whose education plan has ended, correct?
So they can graduate. If they graduate, then at 18 years of age, they no longer have an IEP. They're not covered under the school district anymore. If they do not graduate with a high school diploma, then they are still with the school district until they're 21. And there is a process of transition, a formal process, starting when a child is 12, more formally when they're 16, to help them plan for their future, whether that be college or a vocation or whatever the future placement is for that child.
Right. We had, I think you might have seen the show, someone speak specifically to that issue. So it's
wonderful.
It's a real continuum of service over a long period of time. So what do you think the most important thing that parents should keep in mind going through this process that's been helpful?
Right. I think that it's a marathon. So not to burn yourself out in the first year, because it's a process, and it takes a lot of endurance. And I think being positive and constructive and going in when you go into these school meetings is to have a plan, be organized, having an advocate with you, or even if it's not a professional advocate like myself, bringing in a friend, bringing somebody else in who has had a child with a disability who's gone through the process, or even bringing your mother in or your husband. To go in alone is really problematic because it's overwhelming because for many reasons. And so to have another set of ears there and another voice in a meeting is going to help you represent your child better and give you a clearer message to the school team. And then it becomes a positive scenario where everybody can be working to support the child and have a good understanding of what their needs are and what can be put in place. And you have to be creative. You have to be thinking out of the box, because each child is different, each school system is different, and it keeps changing. So in that moving target, you need to bob and weave. And it's difficult. Anybody who has children understands that your emotions are going to interfere with possibly what the right plan is. A lot of some of the mistakes that parents make going into meetings. Number one, very emotional, wearing your heart on the sleeve and taking it out on the school team. It's not constructive.
Right.
People get defensive, and then everything breaks down, and then nothing happens with your plan.
Right.
So get it all out before you go into a meeting, and to be organized. Right. Because I've been in many meetings where it gets bogged down. It can be very complicated. It's multifaceted. You have medical issues and therapeutic issues and different organizations that are involved and personalities, and people get bogged down in a detail that's not as important. One service which doesn't take care of the whole plan, so you can have a meeting for hours and hours, and you don't accomplish anything, and everyone's exhausted. And you have to come back to the table and do it again. But in the meantime, you have a child who is developing and needs the right services in the appropriate amounts. And so to be more productive, it's to prioritize. Right. And parents really have to do that. You can't just throw it on the school district. Right. You need to understand that you need to explain your philosophy for your child to the team, and then they can help better understand what resources can be applied.
So there's a lot of feedback that needs to occur, and at a minimum, this meeting of the committee occurs once a year. Is that
it's mandated that it should happen once a year, and they go through the individual education plan, the IEP, and you revise it for each year based on the strength, the evaluations of the child and the strengths and weaknesses, and then you'll go through and make the goals and the services needed and the accommodations depending again on the child, and you should all come to an agreement. Now, oftentimes it doesn't come to an agreement, and that's where an advocate can be helpful. You can also agree to disagree and come back to the table instead of just butting heads. Okay. And that happens often. So in answer to your question, more than one time a year. You can meet as many times as a parent. You can call as many meetings as you'd like. Now, practically, you can't meet every week, and sometimes you can do it without the entire committee if it's a smaller issue. Like a goal that might need to be changed, and you can work that out with your special ed chairperson. And sometimes you do need to call the whole committee if it's a placement issue. Right. If the placement is wrong and the environment is wrong, then that's a reason for the whole committee to get together and put their heads together and figure out what the next step is for your child. And so it's
Tell me a little bit about what's happening with, I would imagine there's times when, just because of the changing composition of families, and are there times when you come in to work with a guardian, maybe in the situation where a child has been left with a grandparent or something like that? Right. Are those situations you're starting to see more of?
I see that. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the natural world, I think, these days, that oftentimes, sometimes it's a grandparent acting as the guardian or being the main parent in the process. And legally, if they're the guardian, then they're the person representing that child. But it
Right.
certainly complicates
Right.
the issue. But I think as long as you have a strong person guiding the decisions, that's certainly helpful. When it's unclear with the school as to who is making the decisions, that can make it more complicated, right? Because it is a matter of philosophy sometimes in terms of what you want for your child. Because you have for example, the continuum of classroom settings. So you have a regular classroom setting with supports, which is the least restrictive environment. Again, another special education term, which, and then the other end of that is the more restrictive environment. Now, the law provides that you should try to have your child in the least restrictive environment. So keep them in the mainstream as much as they're able to learn effectively. That doesn't always happen. Many children learn better when they're in a smaller classroom or with other children with special needs or specialized teachers that understand their needs. But there is a shade of gray there because the parents or the guardian representing the child really has the best insight, I believe, as to where on that continuum they may fall. Now, the school district doesn't always offer every environment out there. So they might not have special ed only classrooms, self-contained, and they might not have a resource room. Each district is a little different, and it can depend upon what their population's needs are for that particular year. So again, very proactive and understanding what's happening with your school district is going to help a parent navigate their school system and understand when maybe it's time to go out of district.
Okay. I just learned about that continuum, which I believe goes all the way to hospitalization.
Yes,
children
sure.
all the way at one end. So, and everything in between, and
Right.
a child can move back and forth on that in different venues at different points in their academic careers. They might work better in one situation and
and the goal, the laws sort of encourage through IDEA. Which was reauthorized in 2004, encourages to make the child in the most inclusive environment, so with their typical peers. And that's a decision that is made in the committee, but certainly can be led by the parent, I think, because it's not an exact science. We all would like to see our children in the mainstream. That's my own personal philosophy, but it's not always constructive for the child. And I've experienced that through the meetings that I've gone to through other parents and personally, is that you might anticipate that you want your child in the mainstream, and then find out it really doesn't work. And then you go back to the table and either you call for a new CSE meeting or the school might say, you know what, this is not working. Really important to have the communication and the interaction going on with your school throughout the school year so that you can work together to make those decisions. And also, back to some what I see when it goes awry is when parents only get active when there's a problem. And that's really difficult for everybody involved, but crisis management is very different than the overall big plan. And as an advocate, what I do with parents and families is to sit down and take a bigger view of where are we going here, what is the plan, and then if it changes, you get involved. But if you only get involved when there's a problem, it's not constructive for the child because that's only in the bad moments. You want to support them as it's going well and work better with the educators that are working with your child, not the day when everything falls apart.
I think it's really important that you have so much personal experience with this and as a parent, and you've gone through this process yourself, that you can, it really means a lot.
It's very
supportive environment coming from you.
Yeah, I think it helps. It's heartfelt, and and then when you've lived through it, it's certainly it helps you, I think, be a better advocate. Not that you can't if you don't have a child with a disability, but you live it every day as a parent of a child with special needs. It affects your entire family, and there's a lot of supports out there. That's what I'd like to say to parents, a lot of good supports. And what I love about this program is that it's community-based. And for children with special needs, the community is so important. You can't, as a parent, you can't do it alone. And they need the community to surround them in different ways, through the educational system, through the resources that are available to you in your local community. So it's, this program is going to allow people to access that and understand the need for it. So,
Pam, if someone is at home and they're watching this and they have a child at one point, a young child or a child that started school, starting to have some issues, maybe is even a little further along, and they want to get in touch with you, what should they do?
yes, well, they can call me.
Okay.
And also you can email me at psadvocacy.com, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll take you through what I can do for you. And I like to work with parents on a short-term or a long-term basis. So, this is an ongoing thing. So with a child with disability, as they grow and the needs change, I can work with you on the short term to put a plan together and review your IEP, go through your therapy reports and any evaluations, and help you put into perspective as to how to go forth. And really importantly is the resources that are available in our community. I can help hook you up with not only the national organizations that are here locally, but also the community groups that that work with the disability that your child might have, and the loop of information, and get you involved with that, because an educated parent is the one that's going to most effectively advocate for them. Now, I'm happy to directly or indirectly advocate for families. So if they're more comfortable with me in the background and them going into the meetings without me, I'm very happy to help prepare for them and work with them. Or if they felt that it would be more constructive, if they feel more comfortable, I go into a lot of CSE meetings and work with them to get a better outcome.
Okay, so that's fair. If someone just needs a map and needs you to sort of lay things out in steps for them, and they're comfortable with that, maybe the person is a teacher by profession and they just want some organization, the process, you're fine there, but you'll also go into the meeting and
represent them.
Okay,
yeah,
that's wonderful. That's good. I think I covered almost everything that we wanted to discuss today. I'm really excited about that. Yeah. But if there's just anything or any words of advice that you want to give out to parents there supporting a child with issues, or just the family as a whole,
I think that you had mentioned in a previous segment of Insights that it's lonely to be in the suburbs as a single person, and I can imagine so. And certainly as a parent of a child with a disability, it can be very lonely, because your family is directly impacted in a way that the others in your neighborhood might not be. So reach out. There's a lot of great resources in the community. Call me. I can help guide you, whether you want to hire me as an advocate directly or just to get some advice. We, as parents of children with disabilities, are there to help one another. So.
Yep, and that was actually part of my mission, putting this show together, was to make those connections. So every day I get to feel a little bit of success that way, that we're helping each other.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for being here. Yeah. Well, please tune in next week. I'm very excited to say we will be having E.J. McMahon from Newsday. He's Senior Fellow at the Empire Center. So please tune in next week and watch Insights with Kim Izzarelli. Thank you so much for being here today.